Hello everyone, my name is Laura and I am a polyglot who's studying 5 different languages. I also love to travel and this is my channel, Languages with Laura, where I talk about learning languages and traveling. Makes sense, right? Self-explanatory, right? In this video we are going to talk about becoming a polyglot or learning multiple languages at once. So first off, I'm going to say what is the difference between bilingual and what is the difference between a polyglot. So a bilingual comes from the ability to speak 2 languages fluently. Bi is the to root word there, and lingual is languages, right? Versus a polyglot, poly kind of meaning multiple. So this isn't like super number specific like bilingual is, or even trilingual, which is 3 languages. Polyglot is just multiple languages, someone who speaks more than 2. So in this video, we're going to talk about going from bilingual to polyglot, or someone who speaks 2 languages to multiple languages. I was kind of raised bilingual, but not. I wouldn't say that I was fluent in Spanish, but I started learning Spanish in 1st grade, and I never stopped. Spanish has been something I have been taught throughout my entire educational career. That is just something that is the reality in the place that I grew up, and I'm very thankful for it. But I didn't start being a polyglot until high school, because that's when I added French into the mix. My freshman year of high school, I started learning French, so I guess I was trilingual or also a polyglot at that point. And then I added on Arabic and then Mandarin, and then I went abroad for a year where I learned Russian, and now I am learning German. And so I am a polyglot. I am a very experienced polyglot. So I am going to share with you some of my advice for starting a 3rd language or balancing learning multiple languages a day. If you want, I am thinking about making a vlog of what it's like to learn multiple languages a day. So if you're interested in that, seeing kind of like a vlog in the day of my life, I'd be willing to do that. But for now, we're just going to start off with a simple sit-down video talking about learning multiple languages at once. So the first thing I'm going to say is being bilingual, either because you learned your 2nd language or you were raised bilingual, it doesn't really matter. But if you grew up learning a 2nd language rather than being raised speaking 2 languages fluently, then you kind of already know how to learn a language to some degree. However, I'm just going to put out there that what works for you for one language might not work for another language, especially if you're learning 2 very different languages. For example, when I became a polyglot, I was studying 2 Romance languages, and that made it a lot easier. But if you are doing like 1 Romance language and 1 Slavic language, that's going to be quite different, and so some of your language learning strategies might not work for languages that aren't that similar. So I want to say, first off, keep an open mind about your language learning habits. You might need to explore some new options for this 3rd language, and you might even find that some of those options can help you with your 2nd language too. Because the second thing to keep in mind, don't drop learning your 2nd language. It can be so exciting to pick up a new language and to start down this new path, a new journey with this language, but that doesn't mean you should throw your other language to the wayside. You shouldn't ever stop learning your 2nd language. There's always things that you can review. I'm sure there's always more you can learn. Just make sure that you don't forget about it and you don't throw it to the wayside, and that you actually make time to study 2 separate languages. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and this might be something to keep in mind more so at the beginning when you're deciding to learn a 3rd or 4th or whatever language, is again, that idea of how similar is it to your other language. And the reason why that is important, and I'm going to again use me as an example. If I'm going to learn a language that is very similar to another language I am learning, I want to make sure that I am at a good intermediate or above level. And this is for me personally. You don't have to go by this, but for me personally, I like to make sure I'm at a good advanced enough level before I start this other language. I was really good at Spanish before I started French. I want to learn German and Dutch, but I'm not going to start learning Dutch until I have a very good grasp on German. And this is why. Because I don't want to get them mixed up. I don't want to mix languages up in my head, which is something that I get a lot of comments about in life when I tell people, oh, I speak multiple languages, or I want to be a translator. They're like, how do you not get them jumbled up in your head? Two main ways I don't get them jumbled up in my head is one, don't start from scratch with two languages that are very similar. Like I said, I'm not going to start learning Dutch until I have a good grasp on German, so I can feel confident in my German, so that if I find similarities in Dutch, then I can say, okay, that's a similarity. Great, that'll help me remember it. But if I find something that's different in Dutch, I won't get them mixed up. Same with French and Spanish. I see, oh, this word in French is very similar to this word in Spanish. Great, that'll help me memorize it faster. But I don't want to rely on that, because I don't want to find a word in French that is completely different than the same word in Spanish, because I don't want to accidentally Frenchify the Spanish word and then make no sense. I'm so very cautious of doing that, and I've been very fortunate that I have not had that issue, because I have kept them separate. I'll study them back to back if I can help it. I'll do Spanish in the morning, French in the evenings, or Spanish in the morning, French midday, German in the evenings, whatever. I don't want to do 1 hour of Spanish and then 1 hour of French back to back, because that can kind of mesh them together. I need to have some sort of break or relaxation to switch modes. And so that is how I like to do it. However, I have not always been able to do that, because when I was in high school, I had French class and then Spanish class immediately after. I did not sign up for it to be that way. That is how I was placed. I will say that. But again, because I was at a much more advanced level of Spanish than I was at French at the time, I didn't suffer too badly in terms of getting them mixed up. So those are kind of two things I would keep in mind, is put space between studying the languages so that you can just focus on one and you're not thinking about the other one. Or make sure you're so comfortable in one that you're not getting it mixed up. And again, this is really for languages that are quite similar, the Romance languages, or if I start learning Farsi, which I'm quite interested in as an Arabic speaker, I want to make sure I have a good grasp on Arabic before I start learning Farsi, again, because they have the same alphabet, but it's a completely different language. Again, just make sure that you have the time to add on another language, because you don't want to be taking time from one language and putting it into another when you really should be studying both to your full potential. And then the last thing that I want to point out is be aware of rituals. Okay? So I like to start my languages with warm-ups, listening to music, reading an article, watching a TV show, something that doesn't take a lot of effort, but just kind of gets me thinking about the language, thinking in the language, like, okay, I am going to practice this language now. But you want to be careful about forming rituals. And I kind of more so mean this even before you begin, like, watching the TV show or listening to music, because one mistake I made in the past, and I mean, it's not the worst thing that could have happened, but it's just something to keep in mind. So I had my Arabic class in the evenings at a local community college. And my brother had given me a CD of music that he liked, which was not music that I listened to, but I was like, I will give it a try so I can talk with my brother about it. And so what I started doing was I started listening to the CD of music, and it was a Disturbed album. It was a metal band, before my Arabic class. And I got to a point where I was doing that on my drive to Arabic and walking into my Arabic classroom, that it became a ritual. It became something that made me think about Arabic. So if I didn't listen to the metal band before going into my Arabic class, I felt like I didn't do as well in the class, or I wasn't as prepared, or I'm sure there's some psychological conditioning there about preparing myself. And so then I found that I needed to listen to that metal album, especially before the exam, and I was really nervous. So I was like, because I made it such a habit to listen to metal music and then do my Arabic class and then do my Arabic homework. So I always want to caution against it, especially if you're going to do multiple languages. Just either be careful that you're not forming rituals like this, or the rituals you are forming are good for your language learning. So instead of listening to American metal music, I probably should have been listening to Arabic music. But even then, like, you don't want to be reliant on something to get you started. This is different from a warm-up, remember, because I will go through different warm-ups every day so that I don't get attached to one thing. But it's different from a warm-up. And so I just want to be cautious, especially, again, if you normally study languages in the morning, but you're going to add a language onto the evening. But if you're always like, if you do social media and then go on your language learning lesson or whatever, just be aware of preparing for another lesson, preparing for another hour of language learning, which again is why I caution doing them back to back, and why I would say give some time in between to let your brain relax, to process, to incubate, and move on, so that you don't think about Spanish every time you're trying to speak French or something like that, because that can just get confusing and it can get quite messy. Yeah, that's mostly what I have to say about studying multiple languages. I just want to reiterate, there are so many different methods of learning languages out there, and you can find one method that works for one language but maybe not for another. But I would highly encourage you, if you are thinking about picking up a third language or a fourth language, if you have the time to set aside for it, and you have the motivation and you have the resources, go for it. If you have enjoyed learning your second language and you want to learn another, go for it. Find a study buddy. Go online. Do whatever you need. But learning another language can be so good. And there's that saying, it's not a saying, but I've had people say it to me, and I can confirm it is true, that once you learn a second language, it is so much easier to learn languages after that. Because even if I learn a language that's very similar to my own, or like I learn another Romance language, it's easier to learn. But even learning a Romance language and then switching to a non-Romance language, it is easier to learn a third language, no matter what it is, after you've learned a second language, because you have challenged your brain to new grammar concepts. You have challenged your brain to new sounds and to new sentence structures and new ways of thinking and new cultures to go along with the language. So no matter where you're at in your second language, unless you're a beginner, I would say go for learning a third language. Just go for it. You never know until you try. And if you try and you think, oh, this isn't working, come back to it another time. It doesn't have to be the end. You don't have to give up on the language and say, oh, I can never learn Arabic. It's too hard. I'm never gonna learn it. Just say, okay, maybe now is not the time. Focus on your second language again. And then when you have the time or the brain power or the motivation, then try it again. Because you never know. Like, English breakfast is fine, but Irish breakfast tea? So good. Thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, feel free to subscribe. I post videos every other Monday, and they are either language learning content like this or also traveling content. So hit the bell to be notified when those videos go up. Feel free to comment down below what are the languages you are learning. If you have any tips for when you started learning a third language, or if you're thinking about becoming a polyglot, what are some challenges or some questions that you have? I would love to answer your questions or give more advice in the comments below. If you want me to make more videos like this, if you have any suggestions, I'm always open to it. Again, just comment down below. I'll see it. I'll respond to it. But yeah, so happy language learning, everyone, or happy traveling. And thank you for watching. Ma salama.